When you look in Genesis chapter 1, it says we're created in God's image and we're supposed to have dominion, which is bring order out of chaos. But it says we're created in his image, and if you go back to what do we know about God in chapter 1? Verse 1 says, in the beginning he created the heavens and earth, and they were void and without form. And so what's interesting is God says, you are like me, and by the way, I started with chaos. He takes the trouble to say the first thing he created was not light. The first thing he created was chaos. And then he starts transforming that chaos one step at a time. The sea from the land, the dark from the light, brings life. And so our calling in life is to bring order out of chaos. And we think of it as an enemy, but chaos is the raw material from which we apply purpose. That applies to business, it applies to homes, it applies to churches. All the time we're bringing order out. Even cooking a meal is God's plan, right? You ever see your grandma on a 1,000 ingredients and she takes all these things and somehow puts them together? This feast is created. That's bringing order out of chaos. In my own career, I'm an engineer and I like building things, and as CEO I drove our company to build things. In the late 80s we were building a next generation product, and it was a failed product. It wasn't architected right. It was the wrong business objective. And I almost bankrupted the company pursuing that. Now, what has this got to do with chaos? I had a clear purpose, but it was a wrong purpose, and that's dangerous because I'm purpose driven. So once I get a purpose in my mind, I pursue it and pursue it. God, we need more revenue. Grow our business so I can keep pursuing this purpose. And what happened that month, our sales dropped unexpectedly about 20-25%. What the gift God gave me in that was he forced me to let go of my purpose. My purpose was wrong and I could not admit it. So what happened was, because the drop was so big, we finally had to stop that project. That resulted in me laying off people, friends. We laid off almost half our workforce. It was chaos. It was chaos for our employees. And then God renewed our purpose. He began to say, that was wrong. Here's the direction. And that's painful, by the way, to get redirected on something you think is right, to let go of it and reform. That's bringing order out of chaos. And what was so interesting was we had to be broken to be open to getting on the right track. And when we got on the right track, believe it or not, we grew 600% in the next 5 years. And I look back at that, back to chaos. If you don't have purpose that is aligned with God's, you can't make up for it with more money, more people. If you're not aligned with what God's trying to do, in the end, it's just not going to work. In the COVID situation, we have a healthcare client in south side of Chicago and serves underserved population. And we would go into those kinds of our clients and try to help them craft a longer term strategy and balance day-to-day operations with making changes to get where they wanted to go long term. It's always a constant battle, short term versus long term. And I remember one particular session we had with a group of medical leaders, and I asked them, what's the most important thing to do in the next 90 days? And remember, their load went up 5% with COVID vaccinations, and they just got inundated. And by the way, here's why good systems are important. They had a phone system that was designed to handle certain capacity. When it goes up fivefold, it's not designed to handle it. And what happens when people would call in and the call couldn't be answered? They'd call in again. So now, not only do you have a fivefold increase in demand, you've got a tenfold increase because the calls weren't answered in the first place. You see what I'm getting at? And that creates chaos. These leaders, the number one thing they voted on, we have a little exercise called the Gordian exercise for people to privately vote on brainstorming so that we get their best thinking. And their number one priority for the next quarter was to have time to think. Of all the things they could have said, fix the phone system, hire more people, do this or do that, they were so overwhelmed that their leader needed to recognize, I've got to stop this franticness and give these people time to think so they can lead. So that's an example of, you think you're too busy driving to get gas. That was Stephen Covey's quote. And a leader of those leaders needs to help them. The leader of those leaders needs to say, okay, we're going to take this hour. I don't care how bad it is outside, and stop, and you take some quiet time, shut the door, and have that time to think.